Goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest. Rider, rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, oh. I get those goosebumps every time.
Hey.
Well, hey, we're back.
We literally said that at the same time. We've been around each other for far too long, Dazza.
Way too long, way too long.
Welcome, Loaded Mag, NUFC, full loaded transfer show. We are back again. It's week 2. Is it week 2 or week 3? I'm losing.
Week 3.
Jesus
week 3.
Christ. We're already well into it. The transfer window is now officially open. Fixture lists are in hand, and we're going to get into it. But look, welcome everyone to the channel. Over 100 already tuned in, watching. Welcome to you all. And get your questions in for the boys as well. I can see a few popping up right now. But first and foremost, Daz, how are you, fella? Everything okay?
I'm grand. I'm waiting for that first sign. I could be waiting another while, but yeah, no panic whatsoever. Great to see so many names every day chopping and changing. It feels like I'm on the sun here. I'm living on the sun. It's so hot here in Ireland for the last number of days, actually weeks at this stage. But I'm going to set people a challenge though tonight, Pete. I think people can get to 350 likes. What do you think?
Oh, of course, 350 likes. We've got way 100 already watching right now. We should have 100 likes like that. Let's go.
That. You know what to do? Smash that like button and get us up those algorithms. So that is the challenge. 350 mods. Get on the case.
Right. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's get the boys in. Should we get the debutant in first?
Yes. Let's get him in. Now that he can hear us and we can hear him. Welcome, Olly.
Hi, lads. You all right?
How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, all good. I'm really good to be on. I know you've sent me a few invites, but I've had every night it's been a Tuesday, and I play darts on a Tuesday, so I've kept missing it. So it's really good to be on. It's good to be on. Cheers for the invite.
Pleasure as always. Like I said, it's been in the making for a few months now, so it's a pleasure to have you on. From the NUFC blog, and we're going to get all your opinions, Newcastle United, that's for sure. And of course, we have the Chronicles' own Mr. Charlie Bennett. He's on the beach right now. Jeez,
he's on the beach. Look at his back garden at least.
Hey, Charlie. Boys, one good. Is everyone keeping well? As you can see, I've got my summer attire on. I've got my Carabao Cup 2023 bucket hat on. I'm living the dream, mate. Everybody knows it's been El Scorchio on Tyneside this week, and I actually poured myself a celebratory drink for Pete's Newcastle supporters, just like getting the election onto the board and stuff. But I've actually just kicked it over. I've actually just accidentally kicked it over, so I need to pour another one.
Bad omen. Oh,
what is that career? Charlie, I have a question for you. What is? I saw on Twitter. You went to the offie and they were sold out of brown ale. Every time you come unloaded, there's a story about you going to buy a drink on the day. Are we driving you to drink, Charlie?
Well, I was wanting to keep it a little bit on the download because obviously there's going to be people watching the show going to Morrison's as soon as it opens tomorrow morning. But word on the street, I'll let you into a little secret. Morrison's for Father's Day are selling Newcastle brown ale for £1 a bottle. And there was whispers on the street. Word on the street was that they were selling bottles of brown ale for £1. So I went straight to Morrison's and they were gone, sold out. So I'm on the Stellas. But cheers for having us back on the show, boys. I appreciate it. I love coming on, and he's a rocket, man.
Always a pleasure.
Nice one,
Never
Charlie.
sure. And of course, always a pleasure to have our next guest on. People have been asking for him for a long time to come back on after January, and it's a pleasure to have from Sky Sports, Lee Davey. How you doing?
Welcome back, Lee.
Hey, how you doing? You all
All
good? Nice to be back. Thanks for having me back, guys. And nice to be amongst the Champions League elite. Welcome.
Definitely. Pleasure to have you back on, and sitting alongside the other Champions Leagues qualifiers. Obviously for yourself, the PSG, it's an absolute pleasure. But welcome back on. Look, I'm sure we're going to get some questions coming in for you.
Looking forward
all
to
things French football.
Nice one.
I'm sure we will. But look, first of all, before we get into all the transfers, because we're seeing questions coming in with all the players and the links and all the rest of it. We are all going to get to them, so do not worry. However, we cannot not start with the fixture list. The fixture list. It's out. The Premier League season is upon us. It started again. And as we can see, all the fixtures are laid there in particular. But what we want to start with is the first five. And I want to get your opinions on this, boys. What did you make of that at 9 o'clock when it landed and you saw them as your first five fixtures? Ollie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough start, isn't it? I mean, some people argue it's better to get them out the way early on because obviously, I think when you look at the way Eddie Howe sets us up, we're always organised, we're fit. So if there's any team that comes into the new season not quite up to speed, I think we'd maybe get the better of them. So hopefully Jack Grealish and the rest of the Man City squad keep drinking. But yeah, so it's a tough start, isn't it? I mean, Villa, Unai Emery have just had a really good run in for the rest of the previous season. Man City, and then you've got Liverpool, who I'm expecting to be better than they were last season. And yeah, Brighton, Brentford both finished in the top 9, didn't they? So it's a tough start, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit. Charlie, are you worried about it? There's some people in social media that are going, you know what, bring it on. Like, who cares who we've got? Are you as confident as them, or are you thinking could have done with maybe one or two lower down the league, maybe to start us off?
Well, I think if Eddie Howe was going to pick them out of the hat himself, I don't think he would have picked them, especially the first 4 games. I mean, it is a tricky run, but you've got to remember back to last season, we won 1 out of the first 7 games, I think it was. And the first game of the season, home to Nottingham Forest, is the one that we won. And the fixtures were actually quite kind to it. Yeah, my mic playing up there.
Creating this madness. No one's different to react to it. So that's what we're going to do.
That noise.
I don't know what's going on there.
I muted Charlie just to confirm it is Charlie.
I don't think that's me. That's not me. I'm sitting in the front garden. That's definitely not me.
Not me.
But anyways, I was on a bit of a roll there as well. Basically, I don't think Eddie Howe would have picked them as his first 4 or 5 games. But casting back to last season, we won 1 out of the first 7. The one that we won being the first game of the season. I'm more bothered about, I like going to the away games and stuff. Boxing Day with home and my birthday weekend with home. So I'm more frustrated with that.
Yeah, definitely. Lee, from looking sort of from the outside, that's a tough start, isn't it? It's the one where I think I tweeted out today and said, clearly the Premier League were pissed that we got Champions League because they've come back at us hard with those 5 fixtures. What are you making of that?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough start, isn't it? But look, most games are going to be tough. I think Newcastle are going to be one of those teams now that, it's going to be a big fixture for a lot of clubs next season. And we've not even got really stuck into the transfer window yet. So, a few solid signings, definitely. And Newcastle will be a real attraction next season for a lot of clubs. But I think I was, with the rest of the guys, really, I'm of the opinion that if you're going to play the likes of Man City and Liverpool and even Villa, who finished the season really well, I think you play them early before they really get into their stride. And if you look back, you can, certainly look at last season. It took a little while for City to get going. Liverpool never really got going. So I don't think there's anything to fear there. just as long as Newcastle get off to a good start, and there's no reason to suggest that they wouldn't. But yeah, yes, it's daunting on paper, but listen, this is a different beast now. This is a different Newcastle United. There's nothing now to be afraid of. You know, you've been talking 2 seasons ago, it's completely different, but this is a different team now. And I think there's more for those other teams on that list there to be afraid of. And, you know, I think it's completely switched now. And Newcastle are a team that are going to be feared in this coming season. So, yeah, nothing to be afraid of there. And I would expect certainly maybe 10 plus points on that.
Well,
10, 12 points, 10 points, definitely.
Looking at them fixtures, I think we got 7 points out of that, like last season, didn't we? I think Villa was a win, Man City lost, Liverpool lost, Brighton draw, Brentford win. Yeah, so anything above 7 would be obviously an improvement of last season. I think that should be the aim.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting, and like you guys have said, that if we're going to have them, let's have them early. Who's to say we don't catch them off guard? But Daz, as all the tough fixtures are coming in, you know, you're looking at the end of the season, and it's looking a little bit more positive. So it kind of works its way around a little bit in terms of the back end of the season. From what you see in there, is it going to be a case of it evens itself out over the course of the season?
Yeah, for that relegation battle at the end of the season, Pete, it should be grand. No. Serious. No.
Less of that.
Yeah, the first, just talking about the first group of fixtures first. I was looking at the first 3 initially. And I was thinking, yeah, if we were to get maximum points there now, and as Lee has been saying, catch the bigger clubs off guard to start off with, then we'd be talking about, can we put a challenge to win in the league? You know, that'd be a great little start. And you know, Eddie's going to have them home and come the start of the season. They're going to have a great preseason. So it could play into our hands yet. You never know that we're having that the more difficult start, let's say. But and then as you put up the last 5, bring that in to finish it off. We might claim the trophy early at that stage. So let's be optimistic. If we can get Champions League football next season, who knows? Anything is possible at this stage.
We're not getting ahead of ourselves at all, are we?
No.
And look, we'll just briefly touch on here. I got this from Adam, a good friend of the channel, and he looked at both the home, the fixtures before and after the Champions League games. So as you can see on there, you got Brentford and Sheffield United either side of the first game, Burnley and West Ham either side of the second, Palace at home, Wolves away after the either side of the third, Arsenal and Bournemouth either side of the fourth, Chelsea and Man United either side of the fifth. That's a tough one, and then Spurs away, Fulham at home after the 6th match day. So you know the fixtures are not bad really either side, and there's lots of winnable games in there, lots of home games. Chelsea and Man United at home, that could be a big one there. So there's some nice games there. But look, I'm sure we'll observe and analyze all the fixtures over the course of the season. Boxing Day, it's Forest at home, if I'm right in thinking. First time in a long time we've had a home game on Boxing Day. So it's certainly a change from getting Wigan away.
Wigan, standard Wigan at Christmas.
Years ago, go back years, it was always Wigan away, weren't it? Around Boxing Day.
Well, you won't be going to Leicester this year.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sad about that. But it is what it is. But look, as well as that, I want to just touch on, because just before the fixture list, we did get the retained and released list, and we had and we'll touch on this briefly. We obviously had Matty Longstaff, that's been released from the club, Kieran Clark as well, but interestingly, Richie and Dummett have been retained, or certainly Richie's been retained. Dummett is considering a contract at the moment. Olly, I'll come to you for this one. What what did you make of that retain list? You know, Matty and Clark, were you not surprised by that? But in particular, Richie and Dummett, what was your reaction when you saw that particular retain list for those two players?
Yeah, I think, as you say, there's no real surprises with Matty and Kieran Clark. I think, to be honest with you, a lot of people forgot that Clark was still in our books. I think after that loan at Sheffield United, people, I mean, he pretty much was gone after that loan. But yeah, with Richie, I think towards the end of the season, Howe kind of hinted at a new deal for him. I think he obviously doesn't get much game time now, but I think he values what he does behind the scenes and he's sort of professionalism and things like that. So I think with Richie, it's probably more of a behind the scenes sort of role that he's playing. With Dummett, I mean, probably quite similar, isn't it? And also that homegrown quota, which is probably the reason Mark Gillespie got a new deal as well, I would think. I'm not sure if there's some sort of rule for the Champions League where you have to have a certain number, I think. So maybe for those reasons and the fact they're good behind the scenes, we thought to keep them on.
Definitely. And I'd not grabbed a pick of Mark Gillespie, but for you, Charlie, was that one of the biggest shocks of it all, that Mark Gillespie is effectively being retained? Paul Dummett, as Olly said, considering him for the Champions League, the homegrown or the academy-based player. But
yeah,
I'm surprised.
I think Gillespie and Dummett can count themselves lucky that Newcastle have qualified for the Champions League, because, I mean, where Newcastle are at the stage now where they can't really afford to get sentimental with players. Like, they're on a journey now. They've catapulted themselves beyond where they thought they would be at this stage since the takeover. And obviously the homegrown quota would have had a lot. I think Dummett's he didn't play a single minute last season, correct us if I'm wrong, and I think he's made 3 appearances in the last 2 seasons or something. So that on merit doesn't warrant a new contract playing wise. Richie's a little bit different. He falls into the same category playing wise, but you can obviously tell. I mean, Anthony Gordon spoke about Richie, the influence he's had on the behind the scenes sort of thing. What's Richie now? 33, kicking 34. I could definitely see him staying beyond his contract as a, he's one of Eddie Howe's trusted lieutenants. The one I was actually really happy for was Karius. Karius, I believe, signed a new deal as well, didn't he?
But he's on the verge. I think they're talking to him.
Yeah. They're trying to get him to stay on there. Yeah. They've offered him a new deal, at least, because there was talk about him going back to Europe, wasn't there? Because I think when it comes to goalkeepers, Dubravka's going to want to be number one, isn't he? He's going to want to be number one. So I think if you've got a solid backup keeper who's sort of happy not to be pushing for the number one jersey and sort of happy to, maybe play the cup games and stuff, I think Karius would be a good signing for in that sort of role.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting. People thought that both of those goalkeepers would go. Even Dubravka would go. It looks like that both are going to stay. But it could all change. We don't know. Newcastle are springing surprises, and that leads us quite nicely onto all the transfer talk, because we got blown away with some news that popped out yesterday that nobody was expecting, and it was the potential talks for Inter Milan's Nicolo Barella, centre midfielder. 26 years old, played in the Champions League final. Luke Edwards initially brought out the story. It was confirmed by Sky's Keith Downey, also Craig Hope had mentioned it as well. And he mentioned, Craig Hope mentioned a couple of other snippets that we'll touch on as well. But look, Lee, I'll come to you with regards to Nico Barella. For me, I was just in shock, because he is a super talented guy. How good would it be if we were able to get that over the line and get someone like Nicolo Barella into Newcastle?
Okay, so before I answer that, I just want to say well done to you, brother, for your recent election. I'm going to throw that in there, and also well done to Lisa, who if she's on. So well done to both of you. Very proud. Great job. I know you do a great job of, representing the fans and everything. So really well done on that. In relation to Barella, I mean, yeah, quite right. He's a hell of a player. He's 26 years old. He's probably still not even reached his prime yet, but he's playing some of his best football at Inter. You would have seen him in the Champions League final. He obviously started the Euros against England in 2021. So, we know what type of player he is. He's tenacious, he's hardworking, he's got a great vision, great passing. You can chip in with a goal. He's got everything you want in a midfielder. And it like you say, it kind of blew you guys away. I think it did everybody, to be honest with you. I don't think anyone's seen that coming, because if we look at, Newcastle's transfer dealings so far, it's kind of left field so far. But there is going to be a time where these kind of signings are going to be linked with Newcastle, seriously linked with Newcastle, because Newcastle are not going to, just completely buy Premier League ready-made players straight away. They're going to look for bigger names eventually as, things kind of move on in terms of the project moving forward. It would be a hell of a coup for Newcastle to pick this guy up. He's a hell of a player. It's going to take one hell of a bid, and we've seen, quotes of £50 million. That's not going to cut it, and I'd be quite confident in saying £50 million is not going to get Nicolo Barella, not in the slightest. When you look at Inter's dealings, 97.5 million for Lukaku, 60 million for Ashraf Hakimi, 50 million for Icardi. Those kind of fees. This is one of their key players, and whilst Inter would likely need to offload players for financial reasons, and usually do each season need to offload one of their big signings, I think they'll want to keep hold of him. So it's going to take a huge bid, something in excess of 80 million, to even get them to even think about it. So Newcastle will definitely need to, if this is a serious bid, have to up their bid for him. But it's certainly got Europe talking. That's one thing. It's got Europe talking. And again, as you know, cover French football. The reaction from certainly Paris Saint-Germain and its followers, and certainly fan groups that they've got similar to this, and fan channels, is like, if Newcastle is seriously interested in this guy, what are we doing here? Luis Campos, get a bid in for this guy. So he's very highly thought of. I don't think anyone thought he would be on the market this summer, but it could well be. We'll see what happens. Never say never. Nothing surprises me in transfer season. But again, going back to your point, if Newcastle can get hold of a player like this, what a statement of intent that is. That would be absolutely huge. And he's a hell of a player. I'm sure you've all seen him play. So we'll see what happens with this one. I think it'd be tough to get him out of Italy, being honest. I think that's where he wants to play his football. That's where he's comfortable playing his football. But who would have thought Messi would have left in Barcelona, and PSG could have pulled Neymar out of Barcelona, and all of these things happen in football. And I think we're just waiting for a big, huge kind of transfer this summer, and this could be it. We'll have to wait and see how this one pans out, I think.
Lee's touched on a good point. I think all Newcastle fans are waiting for a big transfer to come out, and this has kind of like been almost like it's pricked our ears up now to is being linked with these top players. Obviously, these talked about in excess of 80 million to get him out the club. Ollie, do you think Newcastle are going to go to those sorts of lengths to get a player like Nico Barella or anybody in this window, out of their current club at that sort of price?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about FFP, hasn't there, in the last few weeks and it's never clear whether the club are kind of briefing that to the press to reduce expectations and make sure selling clubs don't sort of pull our pants down in the transfer market. But then at the same time, I think it is probably fair that we are battling certain restrictions in that sense after spending 250 million in the last 3 windows. So with that in mind, if it does take 80 million, that could be a big chunk of the budget. But then these are the sort of things you have to pay if you want to go for those ready-made Champions League level players. I mean, like the likes of Bruno, Isaac, Botman, they were obviously brilliant players, but they came from more like Europa League level clubs, I would say, where you could get them. I know Isaac costs a lot of money, but the Brunos and Botman, they were more like 30, 35 million, where it was a step up to come to Newcastle and then play in the Premier League. Whereas for Barella, he was playing in the Champions League final last weekend, wasn't he? So that says everything you need to know. So yeah, I've got to agree with Lee there that when I saw 50 million and closing in, I thought I'd be shocked if I got him for that price in this day and age. But the thing is, even if we don't get him, it's just nice to see us going for that caliber of player. I think that's really encouraging.
Definitely. And a lot of people have said, Charlie, that, it's a load of rubbish. It's a rubbish link, this, that, and the other. It's not just Luke Edwards and Craig Hope. Like Sky have reported on it as well. Other reporters, from the Italian side, have said there is genuine interest in there. So although people are kind of rubbishing it in the last 24 hours once it came out, there is still genuine interest in there, and there's there is still a chance of us getting this done. But from your perspective, is it possible?
I mean, Luke Edwards obviously gets a lot of stick sometimes in that, but when it comes to transfers, he has been nailed on in the past. I remember him being the first one to break the Chris Wood news, not the January just went the one before. Yeah. When it comes to transfers, he is always a reliable source from Newcastle point of view, 100%. I mean, in terms of Barella, it was the first day that the window opened yesterday, and all this talk about, they've got 60 million to spend, 80 million to spend or something, just the typical post-takeover before the window opens, like keep expectations low, everything. Day one of the window, Nicola Barella's linked to Newcastle, you know what I mean? I think that gives a strong indication of whether Newcastle's staying him or not. I think that gives more of an indication of what they're thinking of this summer.
Yeah, Daz, I've got to be honest. I think someone's tapped into our loaded.
So do I.
Because Champions League final day. Look, you tell the guys because
So we're talking. We said we come up with this new short show called "Would You Take?" And we're discussing different names. So we're watching the Champions League final, and I put it into our chat. What about this lad Barella? Well, maybe we should throw him in there into the mix as well. And then Pete goes, "I was thinking the same thing." And but then we kind of put him on the back burner for a while because we didn't really think it was realistic. And I thought, okay, if we were to bring him, we'd be talking about maybe 70 million or something like that.
Yeah. But you should have started. You should have just started naming all the Man City players.
Yeah, it was a shot in the dark, really. But I couldn't believe that when we were linked with it. I thought Pete was joking when the news came.
He would fit in perfectly in this team. I mean, Sean Longstaff, yes, he's come on leaps and bounds under Eddie Howe. But if you're talking that like right side of midfield, I mean, you're talking about the man who cast your minds back the Euro final, England-Italy, like he didn't give England's midfield a kick, and obviously he's won Serie A and he's playing in the Champions League final. I mean, we'd be talking about signing a serious, like, it would be the first sort of heavyweight signing with like Newcastle would have made since the takeover, and obviously Isak and Bruno, but like they would like a ready-made top elite player come to Newcastle.
And not someone who is like coming to the end of their career either. It's someone right in their prime.
Banging his prime,
definitely.
I'm going to pour myself another drink, lads. Is that all right? Because obviously I kicked that one over before.
Of course, all right. I need to do the same, Charlie. I need to do the same.
You'll make your way back from Sam Fender eventually. It'll take you a while, but you'll get there.
I'll be 2 seconds, boys.
No worries. But it is one of those that could rumble on. And Nico. Am I right in thinking, Lee, someone like Nicolo Barella, that's not just going to get done like that. Big deals like that take time. So this could, in your opinion, could this be kind of a whole summer type transfer where it's kind of like rumbling on?
I think so, because I just don't think Inter want to sell him. And as I said earlier, touched on earlier, it's one of those situations where they will need to raise funds and sell a player. And he's obviously one of their biggest assets that they've got at the club. The only other place I could see them offload, I can't see them offloading Lautaro Martinez, would maybe be Andre Onana, the goalkeeper. And what they do is usually they'll sell one key player somewhere just to keep themselves afloat. And obviously, I think that's the one that they won't want to sell. However, if anybody gets a sniff that this guy is on the market and they would consider selling him, then you've got a battle on their hands now. The situation you're going to find is that at the moment there's a lot of upheaval in midfielders across Europe. You've got Liverpool bolstering their midfield, United looking for midfielders, Newcastle looking to obviously work on their midfield as well, PSG looking for the fifth straight season to sort their midfield out. All across Europe, Real Madrid have just bought Bellingham, so there's kind of like it's a bit of a market for midfielders this summer. And if anyone certainly gets a sniff that this guy's on the market, then I think Inter could be in a bit of trouble here, and then maybe would get an offer that it's too good for them to refuse. So obviously, this link now is going to start all sorts of speculation. But we'll see what happens. That's why I think it could be an interesting one. But I think it will drag. I think it will drag throughout the summer. My gut feeling is that he might stay at Inter. That's my gut feeling if you're asking me now. But anything can happen. And like you say, with so many clubs looking to improve their midfield area, you can't ever rule anything out. That's the thing. But great to see Newcastle linked. And maybe it's more than just a link, but great to see Newcastle linked with this caliber of footballer, this caliber of player. And it gets you guys super excited, to see the club, just 18 months ago being in the relegation zone to now being linked with such a wonderfully gifted footballer who's still, in my opinion, got his best years ahead of him. So it's incredibly exciting ahead of this first Champions League season for Newcastle. So, hopefully there's something in it. Because regardless of anything, I'd love to see him play in the Premier League, and that'd be great if that would be Newcastle as well. So, yeah.
Just on the Inter keeper, I think it could have been Fabrizio Romano the Celtic, but he's linked to Man United as well. There's talking that they might be throwing a bid, but they're waiting on what's happening with the Gay situation there. But
he worked under Eric Ten Hag before, didn't he?
He's a link there. Yeah, exactly.
We'll definitely wait and see. But interestingly, and we'll touch on these briefly because got transfers coming out of our ears. But these were also linked as part of the Craig Hope piece that you brought out, and it was Federico DiMarco, the sort of left back, played in the Champions League final. I thought he did well. In my opinion, and Sandro Tonali, who we also know Daz very, very well, and we've spoken about him before. Two very, very talented players. Did you guys, Olly? I'll come to you. Did you hear anything about these two players from your perspective, or did you see Craig Hope's article? Do you know too much about these? In terms of what they can offer, if potentially we are even linked with them, because Craig Hope's the only one that's kind of touched on this so far.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the report and I saw that they were mentioned further down the pieces other players from Milan we've looked at. And with DiMarco, I've noticed he can play at wing back, left back, and he's played at centre back a bit as well. I know he's not that big for someone to play at centre back, but if he is versatile, I think that's probably something that appeals to Howe. You've seen it with the likes of Joe Linton. When he can play on the wing, he can play holding midfielder, sort of a number 8 as well. I think it really, really helps when you've got a squad that's quite stretched and will be competing on 4 different fronts next season. I think to have a player who's got a bit of versatility will really help. And I think DiMarco is that. And with Tonali, I'm guessing it might just be an alternative to Barella if obviously we're priced out of him or someone else comes in.
Definitely. Charlie, what did you make of those two links in particular? I mean, I've got to be honest, I love DiMarco just for his attacking intent. He just constantly just drove forward. And is that the kind of left-sided defender that we're looking for? Because alternatively, Burnley, as great as he has been this season, hasn't really done that.
Well, mate, you know what it is? Funny enough, I've got a friend who is from Milan, and she's a big Inter nut. Like she's a proper Inter Milan fan. And she told us about DiMarco because I was asking, can you remember Robin Gosens used to play for Atlanta a couple of years ago? Well, Inter signed him, and I remember Newcastle being linked a while ago. And I was asking why is Robin Gosens not been getting the games? She went DiMarco is class. And I've watched a couple of Inter Milan games. They played AC Milan in their Community Shield. It was in Saudi Arabia, but it was their Community Shield. And honestly, DiMarco was class. And I tweeted at the time, Newcastle need a left back, and this was January or February or something. I tweeted at the time, this DiMarco for Inter Milan looks class. So when I seen the links, and obviously in the Champions League finally played really well, I'd be absolutely rocking with him because Newcastle, Dan Burns done mint last season. He's from Blythe and all that. He's class. Geordie lad through and through, he's mint. But there's no denying that the weak link, if you're looking at Newcastle's strongest 11, they need a left back, don't they? Dan Burns, a centre half playing left back. And what Newcastle need is a Kieran Trippier on the left hand side. And DiMarco, at least going forward, would offer that. He looks a real deal.
Definitely. Lee, do you know a little bit about these two boys? DeMarco and Tonali, what they could potentially give? Tonali comes with huge pedigree when he signed from AC Milan.
Yeah, when he signed for Milan, he took a little bit. He actually got a bit of stick because he took a little bit of time to get used to his move to Milan. He wasn't obviously he came with quite a lot of interest. There was a lot of people that kind of talked him up, and he took a little while to get used to playing in that Milan midfield. And certainly in their title-winning season of 2022, that's when he really came into his own. And he's just carried that on, and obviously into last season, which was, again, he seems to have found his feet now. So no surprise that teams are looking at him. Be interesting to see if there is anything in that. DeMarco, again, I've seen what you guys have seen of him. You would have seen him in the Champions League final. Real kind of hard-working, tenacious, attacking left back. He's you'd look at his game and think, he would come in and certainly enhance the Newcastle team and add extra quality to that left side. But it's tough sometimes getting some of these guys out of Milan and certainly getting them into the Premier League. We're talking about big clubs here themselves. I mean, okay, for a lot of people playing in the Premier League would be, too huge to turn down. But I think sometimes we forget they're playing for, when you're an Italian and you're playing for Inter and AC Milan, it's, for some players, that's the pinnacle. So, getting them out of these clubs is not going to be easy as well. And certainly Inter are not going to want to lose playing like that. They've just lost the Champions League final. They're going to want to come back stronger next season. They want to try and get the Scudetto and win the Scudetto again and pull that back because, they've not won it for 2 years now. They're one of the leading sides. And as I say, there's only going to be so many players that they're going to let go of. And, we spoke about Barella earlier, we spoke about Andre Onana, and, there's been links with Lautaro Martinez. So it will be a very, very interesting, certainly in terms of, whether any club, not just Newcastle, would have a chance of, picking up one of these. They're real, and let's classify them as key players because they are. I mean, you'd have seen it themselves on Saturday night. I thought DeMarco was excellent against Manchester City. I thought half the Inter team were excellent. I thought they played really well and really unlucky, actually. So it'll be again one to keep an eye on to see if there's anything in that. But certainly there'll be a few suitors out there based on his performances last season.
Definitely, I would definitely take DeMarco, but Daz, I know you're a big fan of Tonali, and you've talked about him for a while now. You'd love it.
Yeah, I can't remember what show it was. We were bringing a player who you'd like to take, and I just threw his name out there. He's like a real disruptor there from Milan, and he looks class. I was looking at a few clips of him there again today, but really looks class. I'd love to see him rock up as well. I can't see us getting everyone we want on our list because Dumfries as well was the other one we're watching in the Champions League final. I know he's on the right and with some kind of can't really have him as backup and Trippier as well. So, but we like the look of him as well. We talked about him, Pete, as well on the Champions League final. But it's great that we're linked to all these names. We just something more solid has to happen now, though, to lay down the marker.
Definitely. A few people have mentioned about Tonali being a defensive midfielder. We are looking for that number 6. He could probably play that role quite well. I say probably he can play that role very well.
It's that interesting, Bruno. It's like the debate sort of focuses on Bruno, doesn't it? Really, because it's obviously when Bruno played when he first joined, we had John Joe Shelby sitting there, and Bruno was allowed to play further forward. But all the entirety of last season, Bruno was obviously the sitter. I think Newcastle need a disruptor, holding midfielder in the ranks. It's just whether we need one to put Bruno further forward or whether, because if you sign someone like Barella, Bruno would be staying there. So, well, I don't know what you think about that one.
Bruno can play there. He's proved it. We've got Champions League football with him playing in that position. But what you want is an alternative. You want someone else that can play there. We want versatility within the midfield. You look at every player that Eddie Howe is targeting. They can play in more than one position, and they can play in that position well. And that's the key. In that Bruno can play as a number 6, no problem, but he can also play as a number 8. He's kind of found his form, in his first stint at Newcastle when he first signed in that number 8 position. But it's about, there are certain games where Bruno's played, and I'll go back to two of them. There was the Villa game at Villa Park, and I was there, and he wasn't great in that game. And Arsenal at home, I didn't think he played well either. He was overrun in that position. However, if you'd have had someone else in that number 6 and he played further forward, I think you'd have seen a different Bruno. And it's about that versatility. Can we maneuver the players to benefit us in certain games? And that's what the best teams do. You look at Man City, they chop and change their team to suit the team that they're playing against. Players will still play, but they'll play in a different position to get the best out of them. And I think we need to find that for Bruno. We can't keep relying on him playing in that position no matter who the opposition, because sometimes it isn't going to work. But look, that will rumble on, and we'll continue to look at that and see how that develops.
Just want to get in on one point. I was just thinking about this today. Actually, before I do, 326 in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button, smash the like button, and get us up the algorithms. But just we think that today and yesterday we're linked to a few Inter players. Do you remember? Cast your minds back where PIF were going to potentially buy Inter at one stage. I wonder is there some kind of link in there? And we kind of laughed and we joked saying, yes, we'll buy Inter and they can be our feeder club. But hey.
I love a good conspiracy theory, me, Daz.
No one else mentioned it today, but yeah. So we'll see.
Daz, all I'll say is stranger things have happened. So let's wait and see. But those conspiracy theories, let's keep them coming. That's for sure. And look, we've looked at players coming in and those links and those heavy links. Look, we'll come to one player now who's been linked for the last year. And it's this man, Mr. James Maddison. 2 bids rejected last summer. We apparently made an approach for him in January, but Leicester didn't want to sell. Now relegated with Leicester. It's almost guaranteed that he's leaving the club. And the links are hotting up with Newcastle and James Maddison. Obviously, Tottenham are in there sniffing. What was very interesting today is to see that there was a double bid, 50 million for both Harvey Barnes and Maddison. I'll be interested to get your thoughts on the in just a second. But Olly, James Maddison, what do you think about this deal, and where do you think this is at right now, in your opinion, mate?
Yeah, I mean, just firstly, I think his record in the Premier League over the past few years just speaks for itself, really. I mean, this is in all competitions, but I had a little look, and he's got 70 goal involvement in the past 3 seasons in all competitions, which, okay, some of those might be Conference League or Europa League against poorer sides, but I think one thing we need is a player who can play against a low block defence and find that killer pass or that shot from 20 yards outside the box and just be a bit of a game changer. So I think he could really bring that. And I think the fact Spurs missed out on Europe altogether and we got Champions League, it's almost a double whammy in our favour in that sense. Yeah. I know there was a lot of talk that he might have preferred to move to London, and some people were a bit uneasy with that and thought, well, if he doesn't want to be here, let's go for someone else. But I think now we've got Champions League and he's obviously seen Spurs completely drop out of Europe. I think that'll swing it massively in our favour, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That a lot of people are reporting that is the fact that we're playing Champions League football that could potentially swing the deal. But, has there been... It seems to have all gone a little bit quiet. And I know the international break has kind of, created that. But has there been any movement on the Maddison deal? Like, do you think that we're going to see something in the next week, or is that going to be one that's going to drag on, Olly? What are your opinions on that?
Well, I got something really interesting today from someone who has good links at Leicester. Basically, what he told me was there's a guy called Ben Harden, and he's an agent who works for CAA Base. They basically look after Kieran Trippier, and another player on their list of the players they look after is James Maddison. Anyway, he said that Ben Harden was actually at the training ground today with a lawyer. Now, when he said that, I thought to myself, well, Kieran Trippier has already signed an extension earlier this year. So I don't think it would be him because, like I say, his future is secure. He's not going anywhere. And one of the most high-profile players on Ben Harden's list, again, at CAA Base, is James Maddison. So I'm not trying to suggest it's nearly done, but it does make me wonder, are they like drafting up contracts just in case if he is agreed? Because if I had to guess, his agent would go to Spurs and Newcastle to have a look what they'd be able to offer, what sort of bonuses they'd offer, the length of the contract. So when he told me that, it did make me think, is that over Maddison? And you would think it could be. So time will tell if it is that, but I do think we're in a good position to get him.
Interesting. Very interesting. It's they're going to the training ground to have a look on things. Yeah,
nice one, Olly.
Breaking news. But if they are, if agents and people will, associated with Madison are potentially going to the training ground, that would suggest that things are moving along nicely. But James Madison, for you, is he the guy that we need to take us forward?
Oh, mate, I think everyone knows he's a baller, don't they? I think what Newcastle last summer, let's be honest, they did try and lowball Leicester a little bit with 2 years on his contract. £45 million was the highest bid that they went to. Yes, that was admittedly a little bit of a lowball offer, but I think with 1 year on his contract plus relegation, I don't think Leicester can be any situation to be. Because I think a couple of weeks ago, I've seen a few reports saying that they were still going to hold out for like sort of 55, 60 million. I think they can forget about that. I think it's the noises seem like Newcastle are wanting Madison, like they're wanting assurances sort of from Madison's end that he really wants to be a Newcastle player. Like obviously Newcastle have been doing the due diligence on every signing that they've made. And obviously they've been the talk, Tottenham, London, Newcastle. I don't know if you listened to TalkSport the other day, Danny Murphy was on there and he was talking about whether you would go to Tottenham or whether you go to Newcastle. And he was saying if it's for footballer reasons, right now you are going only one destination, that's Newcastle. You know what I mean? Tottenham are going out there on the slide. Tottenham remind me a little bit of like Newcastle sort of when Newcastle were on the slide, and Newcastle are the sort of the resurgent force of football. Right. Once Bobby Robson left, really it was like a downward sort of slide, wasn't it? And obviously Newcastle are this up and coming force. So I mean, I think Amanda Stavely, Mia Dad, Piff, Jamie Rubin, Eddie Howe, Dan Ashworth, I think they'll all be very happy with these Instagram stories that Callum Wilson's been putting on. I don't know if you've had a little look. Agent Wilson in the England camp.
He's
doing it on purpose, isn't he?
Did you see that he started off like he just tested the boat a little bit when the two of them were playing pool, and it was like a little bit subtle. And then the one the day when he's just grabbing him and he's like, "You come to Newcastle, mate." Yeah, I think God knows what his Instagram post is going to be tomorrow.
There'll be a story about it. But Lee, I know you've watched James Madison quite closely. You've seen a number of Leicester games. I think you were at the last game of the season against West Ham, so you watched him quite closely. From your perspective, where do you think Madison's going, and what could he bring? What is he going to bring potentially when he signs to Newcastle?
Yeah, I think he's leaning towards Newcastle. I think that's where he wants to be. Going back to those Instagram stories, these subtle hints. He's almost teasing the move, isn't he? Nice and early. I think that's clearly where he wants to go. I think for Leicester. And going back to your original question from earlier, Pete, where you talked about, is this going to get over the line? I really think it will, and I think it will after these two international fixtures, just purely because you've got to remember that Leicester need the money. They need the money to reinvest back into the squad. There's 2 weeks until pre-season and then another 5 until the championship season starts. So they really need to get that money quickly. So if they look, if you think that they might, want or try and entice a bidding war between Newcastle and Tottenham, it's not going to happen purely because, they're going to probably get around the £40 million mark. And I can't see either Newcastle or Tottenham really pushing too far above that, purely because he's got a year left on his contract. Is he worth the 40 million? Absolutely. Whoever gets him, and I certainly am siding, I honestly do think he'll go to Newcastle, are going to get a really, really good footballer. He's 26 years old. As Olly was talking about, his goal involvement, Leicester would have even took it to the last day of the season, as poor as they were, if they didn't have James Madison last season, because the amount of points, it's particularly in the first half of the season, that he helped Leicester pick up. He's far and away Leicester's most effective player. And Leicester are going to miss him. Leicester are really going to miss him because, there's not too many players on the market, not too many players that kind of fit into that mold these days, that playmaker mold, who's so effective. And if you can get a player like that, it's almost like a premium now. If you can get a player like that for £40 million who's got the best years ahead of him, I think Newcastle are in a really solid position to get the best out of this guy. His England career is now really going to take off, and I think it's only a matter of time. And obviously, at the end of these, I think it's Tuesday, England's last game, I think we'll really start to see some movement on that deal. So I think that's in the pipeline. I think it's just a case of being a bit more patient. But it certainly appears right now as though he's going to move to Newcastle. And I hope he does. I think it'll be the right move for him. Newcastle are on the up, Champions League football, things are going in the right direction. If I'm James Maddison and I've got a choice between Newcastle and Tottenham, then it's a real easy one for me. And that's not just because I'm on the Newcastle fan channel. Because if there's a Tottenham fan channel, I'd be saying the same thing, exactly the same thing. There's only one place where you want to go right now, and that's Newcastle. And I think that's where he'll end up.
Where do you think he fits in, lads? Because obviously Eddie Howe doesn't play with the number 10, and that's James Maddison's natural position. But at Leicester, he's also played like on the right in that sort of like half space sort of role. But that would be a totally different. That would still be a shake-up of the formation to Eddie Howe likes his right winger, like whether it's Mayfield at night hugging the touchline, with Almon hugging the touchline, but then cutting in. That would be a completely sort of different change of system, like to put Maddison in the team. I'm just interested to hear where you think he would fit in.
Where do we think, boys?
He's a number 10 that can play out wide, but he's not a wide man, if that makes sense.
It does nullify him a little bit when he plays out wide. I've seen him play off the right. I've seen him play off the left. I've seen him play that free role where he just kind of roams and just plays in between the lines. So I think there's a little bit of flexibility with him in terms of how you utilise him. And I think he's intelligent enough footballer to kind of really adapt to those situations. But like you say, he's a natural number 10. How he fits in, it'll be interesting to see really how he's used, but I don't think he'll be used in just one position. I think he'll be used in a multitude of different ways under Eddie Howe, because Newcastle are going to have to set up differently in certain situations. You've got Champions League football next season as well, and bearing in mind, whoever Newcastle come out, look, Newcastle are not just going to want to turn up in the Champions League; they're going to want to make it to the knockout rounds, and and certainly, they're going to take that seriously. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays. But I haven't watched him for the last 5 years quite closely at Leicester. This is a very, very intelligent footballer, and as I said, it's just staggering to get a player of this quality for £40 million, which I think will be pretty much the figure that Newcastle will get him for. But it'll be interesting. I think that certainly. I mean, I don't know how he will adapt to playing alongside. Or playing in a different kind of formation at Leicester. He could do what he liked. He had so much freedom because he was the main man. With Vardy declining, he became the main man at the club. So he almost kind of just took up whatever position he wanted to and kind of dictated the game. But I think he'll be a bit more structured at Newcastle because there's more quality there. I think obviously he's played in a relegation threatened side, and he's been the main man there. So it'll be interesting to see now in a team that's pushing for honours, pushing for top of the league, pushing for Champions League, how he fits into this. But I think he'll thrive. I really do think he'll thrive.
I see James Maddison as part of the evolution of Eddie Howe's tactics. We see Eddie Howe as a straight 4-3-3. And he has been that, but he wasn't necessarily that when he first came into the club because of the players that we had available to us. I do genuinely think that some of the players that will come through this summer will start the evolution of Eddie Howe's tactics. And you boys have already touched on it, that fluid motion, the fact that players will play within the spaces, that they'll play and transition in games. We've already seen it with Willock and Joe Linton this season, where they interchange on the left. So you have Joe Linton that will play as one of the midfield three, and Willock play on the left of the front three, and then all of a sudden they'll switch. So we're already seeing that evolution start to unfold, and I think James Maddison coming in will start to see that evolution of the tactics again. And as you boys have already said, during his time at Leicester, he's played off the left of a front three, he's played off the right of a front three, he's played in the number 8 position. I think there's been a few games where he's played as a midfield 2. On the odd occasion for Leicester, so he can play in various different positions. But what he gives you and what his outlet is, and the one thing I would maintain of James Maddison is wherever he's played, he's produced. He might have not been as effective to the 100%, as he would maybe in that number 10 role, but he's always produced. He's always got goals. He's always got assists. He's always created moments. And he did that with 19 goal contributions in that Leicester team relegated. Should not be underrated. It should not.
I wouldn't be surprised in that. I mean, just touching on the point you said that, I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Howe would rip the rulebook up and play a totally different sort of formation. I mean, you see it with arguably the greatest manager of all time, especially at the minute, Pep Guardiola. I mean, he wins the league with a false 9. He signs a striker. He plays 4-3-3, rips that up. He plays this mad sort of hybrid 3-at-the-back system with John Stones in midfield. He's not afraid to rip it up. Obviously, if you play the same system year in, year out, teams start to suss you a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Howe did sort of tweak his team this season, judging on who he sort of gets in.
Definitely. It's going to be one that rumbles on. And look, boys, we're going to continue talking about it at some point.
I'd be telling his agent who Olly's friends saw talking to Newcastle staff there. Was it today or yesterday? I can't remember. But wherever he wants to play. Wherever he wants to play. That's what you're telling them now.
To be honest, I can see him. I know Charlie wasn't so sure, but I can see him playing on that right. And because Trippier provides the width and often comes on the overlap and gets crosses in with his right foot, and Maddison himself is actually really two-footed. So whether it's Maddison whipping a ball in with his right or cutting in on his left, it's quite unpredictable in that sense. I know Maddison's not got much pace, but he's actually quite an underrated dribbler in terms of the way he can turn you back and forth. So I think with Trippier providing a bit of width on the right and being on the overlap, he's obviously got, well, with Almiron, for example, we all know he's so left-footed. So there's people kind of know if you show him on his left, that's the only way he's going. Whereas Maddison can go both ways. And if he has Trippier on the overlap, I think that could be a nice little partnership next season if he signs. But I think he will. I really do think he will.
Definitely. Look, we've got nearly 400 in the chat. Massive thanks to everyone. We are on the way. But I think we're over halfway to our 350
the target, yeah.
So make sure we're liking. Now, I am aware, Lee, I know you've got to go very, very shortly. Can we do a few quick fire opinions on certain players just before we leave? Because I know people like to get your opinions on certain players, particularly some of the French-based players. First of all, we talked about him with Antonio Mango. This man, Ryan Cherokee. Talk to us about him. How good can he be? And is he destined for the big move this summer potentially?
Ryan Cherokee is like the golden boy of French football. Also, he should have been when he broke on the scene a couple of years ago. He's 19 years old. He has a contract till 2025. He was linked with PSG very, very strongly last summer. He is one of those players that he's got the potential to be generational. He hasn't quite fulfilled that yet, just purely because the ex-Lyon manager, Peter Bosch, didn't quite fancy him. He had a couple of injuries, but since Laurent Blanc come in January, he's really kind of just really kicked on. You may have seen some of his skills and goals towards the end of the season. He's been in incredible form. It's time for him now to really kick on next season. I know football advisor at PSG, Luis Campos, interested in him, wants him. It's not going to come cheap. He's not going to come cheap at all. But we'll see what happens with him. Lyon are in a really strange position right now. New ownership, new manager, not quite where they should be. Very much underwhelming in Ligue 1. Again, third season in a row, they've not qualified for Europe. Is a guy that needs to be playing at a higher level. Keep an eye out for him if he stays at Lyon. If he can catch a French Ligue 1 match with him in, it's a joy to watch. He really is technically very, very sound. No caps for France yet. Hopefully in the future he will. I'm sure he will. Eligible to play for Italy as well. So it'll be interesting where his allegiances lie at international level, full international level, but we'll see. But certainly someone to keep an eye on if you've not watched him or heard about him, but certainly got all the attributes to go to the very, very top, and he's only 19.
Okay. Really quickly moving on. We talked about him again on Tuesday. Adrien Truffert.
Well done, très bien. Oui. Born in Belgium, 21 years old, but actually represents France. Only broke into the scene 2020, actually. Good attacking left back. Made a real kind of big impact on the scene in French football. On his debut, came on as a sub, set up a goal and scored the winner. Since then, been quite a good eye for goal, actually. And he's already got a cap for the French national team. He's 21. So, you know, you've seen the depth of quality in the French national team. So breaking into that is not easy, especially when you're playing Ligue 1. So, you know, great talent, lots of, you know, big future ahead of him. Rennes have got a really good, solid team, actually, of good youngsters. I mean, Guiri and Martin Terrier, we spoke about some of these players on the show before in the past. He's another one that's come through at that club. So, keep an eye on him. He will go on and make more caps for France and hopefully in the future get a big move. So, yeah, good left back, good attacking left back.
I'll just throw a couple more out there, and then there might be a couple more leave-based questions just before you leave. Sure. This guy, Desiree Douay, linked with Newcastle. In fact, yesterday, Mark Douglas of the iPaper mentioned that we're looking at potentially a £12 million move for him. What do you make of Desiree Douay? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, he's again, we talked about the golden boy of French football. He's the golden boy of Rennes. Rennes are not going to let him go for 12 million quid, and they're not going to let him go easily. He has incredible future ahead of him, great talent, pace, power, can finish. He's only young. He's a young lad. I think he's 17, 18. Just quote me on that.
He's doing his exams or something. I was reading.
Yeah, he's really young, but he's broke through really quickly, and he's very similar at Rennes. Very similar to Camavinga. Camavinga broke through at 16, and Rennes, have always give players a chance, no matter what age they are. He's really took that on, and he's been fantastic. So they will not want to lose him, but it will take something bigger than 12 million to get this guy. Lots of talent, bags of talent. He's raw. He would need some time. If anyone were able to get their hands on him, he'd need some time. He's got plenty in his locker, but there's still some elements of his game that need plenty of adapting and plenty of improvement yet. But you can see there's some serious raw talent there in this guy.
Any league-based questions, Daz?
There is two right together on the same player, and it is on Xavi Simons. A bit of talk about him. What do you think?
Yeah. He's another of a big long list of screw-ups from Paris Saint-Germain. I don't know what to say. This guy is extremely talented. Just wanted to make it at PSG. Wanted to kind of. Make it through the ranks at PSG, and the door was blocked for him as per usual. We are seeing signs that the club have finally figured out how to run the club properly and efficiently, but it might be too late for Xavi Simons. Now, there is a buyback clause inserted. It was reported it was 12 million, but there is some, which believed to be a little bit less than that, actually, around about 8 or 9 million, which is incredible. If PSG don't opt to sign this guy for 9 million, then I do not know what to say. I do not know what to say. This guy is a future talent. I know Arsenal are interested in him. PSV want to keep him, but he's destined for bigger things than PSV. I could see him in the Premier League. I'm not so sure he's going to go back to PSG because although there is a buyback clause on it, he has to agree to it. And right now, PSG don't even have a manager. They don't even know if they're going to keep their best player beyond the summer. Everything's up in the air. So for him, he wants some stability. He wants to know he's going to be, the man. He's going to get game time, which he didn't get previously. I can see him in the Premier League. I can see him moving to the Premier League very, very soon. If not this summer, definitely next summer. But again, a real talent.
And this answers who Lee alluded to there. It was a question about Sean's tweet earlier about French international probably leaving PSG. That's who he's talking about there. Sean Casey, I'd say. But moving on from that, let's go another one for Lee. Guiri, you mentioned Guiri earlier. Kev asked, any chance that he's moving? Did he not move last year?
He did, yeah. He moved from Nice to Rennes, and he didn't get on too well with at Nice. So he moved up to Rennes. He's done really well there. scored quite a few goals towards the end of the season, actually. He seems to have found his scoring boots. That's because Martin Terrier got injured. He had a cruciate knee ligament injury. I think he was linked with Newcastle, wasn't he? I think in January, Martin Terrier. So he's kind of jumped in and he's done a really good job of keeping Rennes where they are, qualified them for the Europa League. So, yeah, he's found his scoring boots finally. I think he's found a place that suits him very well. But I do think, again, someone who's destined for a bigger move eventually, maybe got another year at Rennes before he moves on. I think the Premier League would suit him really well, actually. Potentially a move to Serie A, we'll see. But a hugely talented player, really skillful and very technically very sound as well. But yeah, big fan. I've told you before, what I think of Amin Gouiri, and hopefully in the future we'll see him get a bigger move.
I won't even mention Sissoko Fofana, but there's another one here. Kefren Turan, he's been talked about in Newcastle circles and Liverpool circles as well. But you think he's on the move? I
do. Yeah, he's with the greatest respect and the greatest respect for Nice. He's ready for his move now. Incredibly good technical footballer, powerful, strong, can finish, speed. He's a big lad. He's a big strapping lad, and he almost defies, science and biology in terms of the way he glides and moves. Someone so big and so, he's so athletic. I think Liverpool have been quite heavily linked with him, haven't they? I'm surprised nobody else is really coming in for him. I think he said no to Paris Saint-Germain just purely because he wants to play outside of France. Nothing wrong with that, and you understand that he wants to move to, a bigger, more high-profile football league. But he's one of those players that somebody will sign him, and then one or two other clubs will turn around and go, hold on, why didn't we come in for this guy? He's one of those ones who's, got, again, a massive future ahead of him. He's got his dad, Lilian Thuram, who's directing him and giving him, all the advice in terms of where to play his football next and where to kind of, where would be best for him to improve his chances of getting into the French national squad on a more regular basis. So, yeah, this is a great player, really good player. And someone to keep your eye out for if you haven't watched him. But I think he'll be in the Premier League, definitely. He's primed for it, and I think that's where he'll be.
Just one more from me, because I know you've got to go. Jean-Claire Todibo, he was linked with us. Do you think he's going to move this window?
Possibly, again, somebody who could come out of Nice. Now, Nice will want to build their project. Of course they will. It looks as though... Jim Ratcliffe, who is the owner of Ineos and Nice, might not get his wish of Manchester United, and if he doesn't, then he'll want to put all his eggs into Nice, of course. That may need, and I'm sure he won't want to get rid of Jean-Claire Todibo because he's one of their best players. I think he'll accept losing Kefren Turan, but maybe not Jean-Claire Todibo. He's built a real solid defensive partnership next to Dante. Nice have had a really good second half of the season. Fell off a little bit towards the end, but a really good second half of the season. He's been one of the key elements of that. They've stopped leaking goals. They've been solid at the back, and he's been part of that. This guy, went off to Barcelona at a really young age, spent 2 years there. Yes, he was loaned out, but Barcelona seen something in him very early on, and he's come back to Nice. Again, like where he's found his home, found somewhere where he's been able to flourish under the in the right environment. But I think he'll be back for 2 or 3 years at Nice, and then he'll go on and move on. Could he move this summer? Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few clubs that have been interested in him or certainly watching him. He may get another year at Nice. That's what I think will happen before he gets his big move. So I think Thuram maybe this summer, and Todibo potentially next summer will leave.
Right, I know you've got to go. I know there was a Seko Fofana question. We'll save that for next time.
What was it? Go on. What was it? Of Seko?
Is he moving this summer?
Is he moving this summer? I'm going to say no.
He's in the Champions League, isn't he?
I sat here last summer and I said, if he's there, if he's at Lens on the 1st of September 2022, I'd be surprised. He stayed. He helped get them to the Champions League. I think he stays for the Champions League season, and then I think he goes next season. Don't ask me to. No idea, but he will go. I think he'll go next season. I think he'll have one more year.
Lee, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I know you had
Thanks for having us. Thank you, guys. Great to see you all. Ollie, Charlie, nice to meet you guys.
You too, brother.
Great to hear your input. Fantastic stuff. Daz, Pete, thank you very much. And everybody out there, thanks for the questions. And I hope to see you guys again soon over the summer.
Yeah, we'll get you back on definitely some point, but you take care.
Take care, guys. 31st of August, Champions League draw.
Bring it on.
Penciled in the Davey.
PSG. We want PSG. That's what we want.
See you there.
See you later.
Take care, guys.
See you, mate.
Bye-bye.
Great to have him on. We always have to get the French input because he's got so much knowledge of the league and the players. So
I wish I'd stuck in a French in school now.
Yeah. Oh, God. He just being sitting in France with him. It's just like it's just next level. But great to have Leon as always. But boys, I saved a couple of our well, I say more than a couple. There's a few, but two particular ones for you guys. And first of all, this came out today, which I thought was really, really interesting. And there's links now that Tottenham are not going to take up their option or can't take up their option of after their 2-year loan of Dejan Kulusevski. And today in the Chronicle, it was mentioned that Newcastle had been offered the chance to buy Dejan Kulusevski after, obviously, as it says on there, the Tottenham deal falls through. Charlie, do you know anything about this? But in particular, I want to get your opinion first off on Dejan Kulusevski, and would you take him at Newcastle?
All day, mate. I think it would be a no-brainer. I mean, he came to Tottenham and he sort of smashed up and he went a little bit quiet, didn't he, towards the back of the season. He was injured and stuff, wasn't he? But I mean, he's definitely somebody. He's a 100% upgrade on, Murphy or Almiron. Like, that's pretty undisputed. My concern is the Isak chant, because the Alexander Isak chant is gimme a striker from Sweden, and Tottenham fans sing gimme a ginger from Sweden. So if Kulusevski does sign for Newcastle, we're gonna have to sort something out. I don't know if they're gonna have an arm wrestle, or they're gonna have a little game of poker or whatever, or a little game of singles in the Newcastle training ground. So we're gonna have to do something about that.
We can't sign him now; it's ruined the chant.
But no, he is a class player. I mean, if anybody's going to come in and upgrade the squad, it's always a bonus. You know what I mean? If his character's right, the background check's all good, and the price is right, get him in.
Hold on a second. I just saw that. Come on, no.
What was that? Me?
No, he's on about me.
No.
Me and my bro. He said Lee's the best Davey. No. Come on, I'm here every day, every week.
Look, you're getting this one question, Sophie, because it comes up every year, every summer, and January.
I have got no chance. And trust me, Ian. I've tried many a time over the year. I have got no chance. If you met him in person, you'd understand why. He's an absolute unit. Yeah, you've got no chance of that. But Ollie, I want to come to you with regards to Kulusevski. He has had a bit of an injury-ravaged season, but correct me if I'm wrong, it was talking about 23 million to potentially get this deal signed up. Surely that would be a no-brainer if that was the case that it was.
Yeah.
I had heard it was around that sort of fee.
Yeah, because the last thing I read was that if Tottenham qualified for the Champions League, they had an obligation to buy him for 35 million euros, which is 30 million, I think. But obviously they haven't done that. They haven't even finished in Europe. So I think what I last read was that they were trying to negotiate that fee down with Juventus. But obviously because there's no obligation, now, so that it almost gives us a chance to get in there if we wanted him. So I think the only thing for me is, even though it would be great to have squad depth and bring in, say, Maddison and a Kulusevski, I think they're two players who would be expecting to play. And I think if we signed Maddison and played him on the right, I think a Kulusevski wouldn't come in to be backup. I'm not sure we're at that stage yet where we could have someone like him come in, and obviously we need a big squad. But I get the feeling he'd fill Maddison's space. But then it's good to have options. I mean, if Maddison does end up going to Spurs, could we look at Kulusevski instead? I'm not sure he's the same caliber of player, but yeah, the fact that Tottenham's obligation to buy is expired now, it leaves the door open, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It does. I know we touched on Kulusevski briefly, but what are your thoughts on Dejan Kulusevski? Would you take him? I think it's a really interesting point that Olly made about potentially getting in the way and kind of clashing with other players that we've been linked with.
Yeah, look, it depends what our overall plans are. If he fits into when we don't have someone else coming in that position, yeah, why not? But also, it was Chris Hall that mentioned it. Over 6 months ago, he made this suggestion. But if Spurs didn't qualify for the Champions League, and at that stage it was a pipe dream. Well, now it's reality. We wouldn't us there. And then the other thing is, I want us to be getting him for the same price that Spurs are offering. I don't want them to up their price because it's Newcastle now and we're in the Champions League, whatever. So, a deal could be struck there if I'd say I imagine he's on the list, but he may be lower down on the list. But I'd take him.
Yeah, if I'm being totally honest, boy, I don't think we're going to be looking to prioritise a winger. I think it's definitely a centre midfielder, possibly two, and then a left back. I think that's the three priorities. I don't think we're going to be going gung-ho on a winger.
Yeah, it'd have to be someone special or certainly the right price to get them get them out of there. And the player that was linked with us earlier on in the week, again, another one that kind of came out of the blue, is Felix Emeka. So this one definitely came out of the blue for us because we'd planned something else for the evening, and all of a sudden, me, Daz, and Chris were scrambling to do a live because this news had broken, and it was Luke Edwards again saying that we'd been poised to move for Felix Emeka from Wolfsburg for around 15 million. How much do you know about Felix Emeka, boys? Have you seen much of him? And what do you think about the potential of signing him, Charlie?
Well, I mean, I'm not on this podcast to be some sort of know-it-all charlatan or anything. Like when we were talking about DeMarco before, I pitched me little bit insight there. I have a friend that is an Inter Milan nut. I knew a good bit about DeMarco, but I'd be lying.
Milan.
I'd be lying if I said I was a encyclopedia on the mention. You know what I mean? I can barely pronounce the lad's name. You know what I mean? But Olly, maybe you want to take the lead on this one, brother.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen him play, but I was writing a piece for the blog the night obviously the news came out from Luke Edwards, and obviously the fact he played for Man City. I think he did actually appear once in the Champions League off the bench for them, but obviously he's been released there. I think he's made a bit of a career for himself in the Bundesliga. And if you look at his profile, I think he's about 6'3". I think he can play, like we've mentioned, number 6 and number 8. So he's quite versatile. And I spoke to a guy called Ronan Murphy at Football Transfers, who's like a Bundesliga pundit there. And he was basically saying that he's a little bit like McTominay in his style. I know that won't sell it to a lot of people because people don't want McTominay, but I think he's seen as quite a physical specimen who can get up and down the pitch, play in the deep line role and in the box-to-box role. And I think as well, if it's 15 million for a 22-year-old with potential, I mean, if Eddie Howe can get the best out of him for 50 and he's only 15 million, then it could be one of those sort of cut price deals that end up being a great signing. But we'll see. I don't know what the Barella stuff and how that impacts Nemeka, to be honest.
It screams a little bit Dan Ashraf, this one, like a sort of like a Dan Ashraf style of signing where, relative unknown from Europe, get them in quite cheap, and then next thing you know, he's an absolute baller. I know what I mean? He's in the big clubs are coming, like from when he was at Brighton.
I mean, one thing that's worth mentioning there, when Charlie just said Dan Ashworth, I know Dan Ashworth used to work in the FA, where he'd obviously oversee some of the England youth teams. Yeah. So I know Nemeka played for England before he then became
he did.
German international. So
I've seen that.
Wow. Yeah, so who knows? There's a chance Dan Ashworth might have thought, I remember him when he was playing for England at youth level, and now obviously he's moved to Germany, and I think he's price tagged there. You know what it's like if you're a Premier League proven player, you're immediately worth 50 million plus, whereas in Germany, I don't think Wolfsburg have done too well in recent years, so maybe the price would be a little bit cheaper because of that. So yeah, maybe you're right, Charlie. Dan Ashworth might have had a bit of history with him.
Interesting, very interesting. We're getting to the point now where we're going to look at some quick fire questions from the chat. But just a reminder, Daz, have we got a members draw tonight?
We do have a members draw tonight. Do you want to do it now?
Why not? The boys are here. Well, the boys are here. Why not? People have no idea what this is, boys, but the members draw is up and running. So, guys, do you want to let us know what's in it?
Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. I think you can. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here's the wheel, with all our members listed on it. So up for grabs is a voucher for the Newcastle Club shop worth just over £70. So that will allow you to buy one of the new kits. So this are a number of prizes that have been donated by Tampa Toon, our friend Tampa Toon. So here we go. Best luck to everyone. You have, and remember, once the name is cut out, you have 1 week to claim your prize. Or else we move on. We have to move on. We have to keep the show on the road. So best luck to everyone. Here goes.
Oh, drum roll at the ready. Who's that? Is it stop?
James Mitch.
Oh, congratulations, James Mitch.
Congratulations, James Mitch. You have 1 week. If you're in the chat now, great. Let us know. Contact us on Twitter. Any of us are on the loaded chat, our loaded Twitter, and we will get that voucher sent out to you. So congratulations, James.
Oh, if he's not listening, the chat will roll it again.
We'll roll it again. I think I have to log out now to get myself back on. So I'll be back in a sec.
Yeah, definitely. This is at the point of the show where Daz's internet starts to just slow down just a little bit. But I hope you boys are okay just for a few minutes. We've got some questions that I really wanted to ask you just from people in the chat. So Craig Lee's put in here, I'll ask you this one, Ollie. Does anyone think Gordon should sack off the under 21 Euros and get pre-season under Eddie Howe? He has been called up, but do you think that will be a hindrance to him or a benefit being in the Euros?
To be honest with you, I think it'll benefit him. I think playing a competitive level just before you then come back and join, obviously, the team for pre-season, I think that can only help. I mean, since he signed from Everton in January, he's not actually played that many games. He's come off the bench a few times, and I think he's probably only started three or four, maybe at best. So I think if he's going to play for England and he can play regularly there over the tournament, I think that can only help him build his confidence, build his fitness. And I get the feeling from that. I don't know if you saw the post-match interview with him after the Chelsea game, and he kind of admitted that he hadn't been there physically, mentally, and that he was really raring to go. And I think playing for the under 21s just before he returns for pre-season will do him the world of good, to be honest.
Definitely. And Charlie, I don't know if you've seen this, but this broke not long before we came on air, and Fabrizio Romano had mentioned a young 16-year-old defender, Leo Sahar, is in negotiations potentially to be coming to Newcastle over from Wolves. England international defender and one for the future. And David Chivers has mentioned Wolves youth coming in. What do you, not necessarily about him in particular, but what do you make about how seemingly Dan Ashworth is going about his business? Because I'm assuming it's him that's doing this. He's bringing in and highlighting these top young players as ones for the future.
Well, mate, you've just took the words out of my mouth there. But we touched on Dan Ashworth having his fingerprints all over the Nemeka deal. Yeah. I mean, this absolutely screams Dan Ashworth. You know what I mean? And since he's come in, can you remember he did a BT Sport interview? This was when he was still at Brighton. He did a pitch side before a Brighton game, and he said there was like 5 pillars to his philosophy. There was obviously first team. I think women's team was one. But one of them was youth team. And I think since Dan Ashworth's come in, you've seen the youth team. His fingerprints have been on that more than anything. I mean, especially growing up in the northeast and being from Newcastle. As long as I've been alive, it was always sort of considered that Sunderland had the better academy. I mean, you can see that in the youth in the England team. You've got Jordan Pickford, Jordan Henderson. Newcastle academy hasn't really been producing that type of player. And I think one thing from the takeover that's going to excel, that's going to really excite fans. What fans can really get behind is if we start producing some talent coming through the youth academy. Obviously, whether they're from Newcastle or from elsewhere. And I think Dan Ashworth's going to be key to that.
Yeah, just double checking what Nobby is saying there in the chat. It looks like the chap from Napoli is going to Bayern. Bayern Munich, according to Fabrizio.
Breaking news. So Kim Min-jae has been linked with Newcastle. He was in our earlier discussions the other week, but looking like he could well be heading to Bayern. I'm sure Bayern have got like 6 centre-backs.
Yeah, they have.
De Ligt and
Give us one.
Meccano and a few others. Like, what?
What would you do, lad? Do you know if you were in his position? Like, if we were sitting here, the four of us, and we were multi-millionaires football players, Bayern Munich would never be somewhere that like interests me, because it's just I know you're guaranteed to win the league every year, but I'd want to go. I know he's been linked to Man United, he's been linked to Newcastle, but I'd want to go somewhere that can test yourself. You know what I mean? Bayern Munich's just it's an easy given, isn't it? It is, isn't it? I mean, the biggest drama they've had in their league for years is the fact that they still won the league on the last day of the season.
Look at Pep. He tends to go to the clubs that are going to win the league as well. So he'd probably go to Germany now and win the league. He's won it with Napoli in Italy. So we move on. We move on from him. He does look a beast, but we'll move on.
Okay, Daz, you're back. You've returned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So look, I'm going to let you take the reins on the questions. I did the first couple just while you were
cool.
Some great questions in the chat, I've got to say. Massive thanks, as always, to people in the chat for their superb questions, and some tasty ones in there too.
Yeah. Okay. Let me start at the top. So, Savalansky, what are you thinking, lads? If you're coming to Newcastle, Savalansky.
I think it's him or Madison. I can't see both of them coming in.
No, I think they'd fill very similar roles, wouldn't they? They're kind of a bit like Madison. They're kind of inverted wingers who can drift inside, but they could also play number 10, a more attacking number 8. So yeah, I think the money you'd spend on 2 similar players there, it's one or the other. So I think Szoboszlai would be more expensive as well, with them being younger, with them not having the same contract situation as Madison. I think you'd be looking at having to spend quite a bit more to get him. Obviously a club as well who's got Champions League football, so they're not really in any rush to sell, whereas Leicester kind of need the funds. He's got a year on his contract, so yeah, I think he'd cost quite a bit more than Madison.
I couldn't pronounce Nemeta's name before. I'm not even going to try and butcher. I'll try and butcher that one with me Geordie patois.
I love it. Geordie patois. I love it.
Come on, Charlie, give it a go.
Dominic Slobberfly. Just say Slobberfly.
Slobolsha.
There we go. We'll take it.
The one thing I'll say, just before the other questions come in, it has gone a little bit cold, hasn't it? From that ramp up after the end of the season, and it was like Szoboszlai. Yeah. Last week or week and a half, it has kind of gone quiet on him. So, which makes you think, is there really anything in it? I don't know.
When you said it went a little bit cold, Pete, I thought you were about in my front garden. I was saying it's still absolutely beaming here, brother.
I'm in the kitchen. I wish I was outside with you, mate. It's a dream out there, mate.
Yeah, just one thing on Szoboszlai there. When you mentioned that, Pete, it just made me think that there was a period where I know Luke Edwards, the Telegraph, put a piece out saying that Newcastle kind of want to know that Madison definitely wants to move. And then in that period of a week after that, there was a lot of Szoboszlai links, and it made me wonder. I'm sure he is someone we're looking at, but maybe those links emerged to try and sort of push Madison into thinking, wait a second, if I don't make my decision here, Newcastle are going to go for someone else, because it sometimes can be smoke and mirrors like that. So it makes you wonder if that was timed on purpose.
I love the way Olly has it nailed down, saying Szoboszlai. Yeah, nailed down. He said it 5 times in one sentence. I like it.
I'm just glad we haven't been linked with that Napoli winger, because I'd struggled there.
Kiki.
Oh my God, Dazzy.
Love him.
You've been talking about him for a year, haven't you?
Yeah.
He is class. He is unbelievable.
Stop. We're going live. If we're ever linked to the serious link with him, we're going live, Pete. I don't care.
Oh, yeah. Any time of the day.
He was actually mentioned. There was actually a couple of sort of articles towards the end, I think, of the season just gone. I think it was The Athletic who mentioned his name as someone we like, but then, I mean, who doesn't like him? But they kind of said, unless we did get Champions League, but unless we somehow got access to mega money, which based on recent reports, we've got a decent amount, but maybe not hundreds and hundreds to spend this summer. So when you get in the Champions League, you never know who you're going to attract. I mean, the Barella moves are probably an example of how ambitious we're going to be now. But yeah, I wouldn't say his name, but I think he'll probably be moving to a Real Madrid or a Man City, won't he? That might be a step too far.
They signed him for like 10 million or something like last season as well, didn't they? Something crazy. It was Kim Min-jae as well. He joined last season as well. They signed him for about 16 million or something. Crazy. They're going to get ripped apart in Napoli though. They're like the latest hipster team on there. Remember when Ajax came through, Monaco came through one year. I think Atletico Madrid. There's always been a Dortmund were 1 year. There's always been a hipster team that's come through and that gets ripped to shreds. And Napoli look like they're going to be that team, don't they?
Won't be us. We won't be ripped apart like that. Let's move on. Let's go to you 50 million. Would you spend it on Barella or would you go for Vega and Arda Güler? Two young lads.
Well, do you want to take this, Charlie?
I mean, to quote Brendan Rodgers with Madison last season, I think you'll probably be able to get Barella's left leg for 50 million. I think we're probably going to have to push the boat a little bit further. But I'd go for. I mean, I'm excited now. Now I've seen the links for Barella. I mean, I'm all for it. Know what I mean? Just that would be the one I'd be going for. If that's it, between the options there. I mean, Vieira's more one for the future, isn't he? He's young, isn't he? Barella's for the here and now. He's like he'd be the statement, wouldn't he?
Yeah. I know that Arda Güler, the Fenerbahce, he's only 18, I think. And I was reading for Fabrizio Romano saying a few days ago that because he played more than 1,500 minutes for Fenerbahce this season, his release clauses, I think it's 17.5 million euros. So that's only 15 million, which if he's one of Europe's best young players, I mean, 15 million, he could be worth 10 times that in a couple of years if he really is one of the best. So to be honest with you, I can see us, if that deal is doable for us, I can see us going for someone like him alongside Barella. I know that's ambitious, but I think they'd see him as more of a Garang Kuhl type signing who wouldn't come in and play for the under-21s, of course not, but he would come in and get loaned out and then be a player for the first team in a few years. But obviously there'll be massive competition for him. So yeah, we'll have to hope Dan Ash was on that one as well.
Since you mentioned Garang Kuhl, let's go to this one. Would you send him out on loan again, or would you have him stick around for a year? I think he's going out on loan. That's the.
Yeah, I mean, he had a bit of a nightmare, didn't he? At Hearts, he found himself on the bench and stuff, and he didn't really have much of an impact. But you can't really judge it. It's a bit hit and miss sending him up to. I mean, he got off the plane from Australia and was sent him up to bloody Scotland in January, you know what I mean? It's a bit of a culture shock there, you know what I mean? And like obviously Matty Longstaff went up there and had an absolute mare at Aberdeen. I would like to see him. I'd like to see him in the English pyramid system, like do a research about where we're going to send him to and give him a good little crack, maybe League One, top end of League One, Championship, and he's not going to get a kick at Newcastle next season, really. So I'd be sending him out on loan. But he's got something about him, you know what I mean? He's definitely got something about him.
Would you send him to like a Southampton?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Charlie said, I think getting him a move to the Championship would be ideal because the first thing that's important is getting him game time because obviously at Hearts there was so many times I had a little look and he was on the bench and not even coming on towards the end of the season. I think it's worth mentioning that he came from Australia as like a 17-year-old. He's turned 18 now, but if you're a 17-year-old lad, you've left your family the other side of the world, it's probably quite useful for him to be in a squad at Hearts where he had 3 other Australian internationals who be familiar faces, familiar voices. And I think as well with Shola Amiobi, sometimes visiting some of our loan players, it's not actually that far north for him to just go up there, see him, and vice versa. So I think for his first few months, I know it was frustrating not to see him get game time, and it'll be really important this summer to find a move where he does play. But I think I can kind of understand why we let him go there initially. But yeah, I think a Championship move would be good to get him used to the physical football of England, but also even the climate. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but Australia is a totally different place to play football, isn't it?
100%. I mean, you would have probably landed at Newcastle Airport with your surfboard and that from Australia, and we would have sent him north of the border, and he would have been. It was January as well, by the way, so a little bit of a culture shock.
Simon put in the chat just a second ago. I'll just steal the chat just for a second. Yeah. Coel could play in the cups earlier. Hey, we're part of the big boys now, Simon. We actually go into the third round of the latter stage of the cups, and is he going to want to stick around in January? Who knows? But Brett C mentioned maybe Bristol Rovers. Elliot Anderson had a great stint there. Could it be that? I would personally try and play him. If he can be guaranteed to play week in, week out, I'd want him to go in the Championship.
I don't even think we're. Do you know we played Tranmere in the second round of the cup last season? I think we'll actually get a bye this season because we're
in the third round
because Newcastle are in the Champions League. I don't even think so. That's one early round out the way just to start with.
Yeah, maybe you could use them as a sweetener in a deal. Like, let's say, as you said, Southampton, Pete, like maybe for like so Walker Peters or someone, I don't know, from Southampton. But let's see.
Young players as well, Daz. They develop young players. You look at Labia, who we've been linked with as well. Defensive midfielder, like he's come from Man City. Many others, Alcaraz, who we've been linked with. They love working with young players. He could be perfect for them.
Okay, next question. Charlie, I will put this to Olly as well, but I'm going to straight to you with this one, Charlie. If you had 100 million, would you spend it all on beer, or would you get some nuts as well?
Well, I'd spend a little bit of it on beer because I've currently run out at the minute. I mean, I've got some in the fridge, so I'd have about £99 million to spend on players. Oh, wait, on nuts, not players. No, forget the nuts. Maybe pork scratchings, or do you know them? What they call the McCoy's crisps, pork scratchings, something like that. Not nuts. Forget nuts, man. Not for me.
McCoy's the class, though, man.
Oh, the green pack, the cheese and onion ones. They are god tier crisps.
No nuts, Bennett.
If we ask Olly the next question, you can go and grab yourself another beer, Charlie.
Cheers, mate.
He didn't need any more encouragement. He's gone. I love it.
Do you want that one, Olly, or do you want a different question?
I mean, I was going to say if Newcastle needed an extra 30 million to get Barella, I would just give a little bit to them if it meant signing Barella. Yeah.
Okay, let's go with this one. Yeah, okay. This one comes from Daryl. Do you guys think Lascelles, Lewis, and Manquillo get sold, loaned out, or stay this season?
It's interesting that because I can't see them being part of Eddie Howe's plans because they haven't been for a while now. And the tough part is, especially with someone like Lewis, is when he signed for what was it, 15 million from Norwich, he was probably on decent wages then. I mean, when you sign for a Premier League team for that sort of money, you're not going to be on like a Championship wage. So I think the problem we've got with someone like him is that there'll be Championship interest, but they probably couldn't afford his wages. So, and also he's not played enough game time for Premier League clubs to come in and think he's ready to start playing in the Premier League now. So I think there'll be Championship interest, but loan bids. And I think with Lascelles, I saw Luton linked with Lascelles. And he's at a difficult point of his career, isn't he? Because I know Howe often praises him and said he's a bit like a younger version of like the Richies and Dummets, that he's so good behind the scenes and he's a leader. And I think Howe is really happy to have him, but he's getting to that stage of his career now where he wants to play. So I think if like a Nottingham Forest, for example, if they came back, I know he's from Uttoxeter, which isn't too far from there. So if his family are still based around there, I know he's got a partner and kids up in Newcastle, but if he got like a permanent move to say Nottingham Forest and he could play every week, but play in the Premier League, I think it's probably a good time for him to go, and he'd leave with everyone's best wishes. But so yeah, I think with Lascelles, it'll be dependent on if we get another right-sided centre back, because we haven't got that much depth there, and obviously it's going to be a busy season. So yeah, I can see Manquillo going back to Spain. There's been a few links with a few clubs in Spain now for a while, and I know Kraft's getting back to full fitness. So yeah, I could see maybe Lascelles and Manquillo possibly on permanent and a Lewis loan deal, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll go to you as well, Charlie. Do you think Lascelles, Lewis, and Manquillo get sold, loaned out, or stay this season?
I mean, I could see Lascelles being a high-profile casualty. I mean, he's been, and I obviously got a lot of stick when he was playing, but everyone knows he's been a wicked servant and stuff, and he has been a captain behind the scenes. I mean, it must have been, put yourself in Jamal Lascelles' shoes. It must have been tough being the captain, but so. It's almost like the John Terry situation when he lifts the cup, but he's not really. Do you know what I mean? So I think Lascelles will be one of them players. You've seen them leave in recent years, like Shelvey and stuff. Like when his time does come to an end, he'll get the full sort of. adulation of the fans. I would expect him to leave this summer. I do. I think he's out of them three. Well, Lewis as well. I think the Shells will be the one wanting to play first team football. Everton, I mean, I've been doing a little bit of work for the Liverpool Echo lately. I know Everton, they've decided not to opt for Conor Cody's new deal. Yerry Mina's on his way out. I think someone like Everton could do with Jamal Lascelles and like get a leader in the dressing room. I mean, he's not good enough for Newcastle right now, but there's no denying he's definitely a mid-table, bottom half Premier League caliber centre back, in my opinion, anyway.
We always have someone trying to promote Everton on this show. Jesus, if it's not you, it's Chris Hall.
If Chris was on the show now, it'd be on the phone. Mate,
calm down.
I love it. Chrissy Kenwright, we call him. Chrissy Kenwright for a reason. Because he's always in the boardroom trying to move players on to Everton. But it's an interesting one. I do want to just steal it for a second because there's one player I wanted to bring to the table. We've talked about him briefly, but Olly, I'll come to you with this, man. Livramento. Obviously, he had a difficult ACL injury. He's coming back from injury now. You know, looking at potential cover for Trippier, pushing Trippier, who's 33 right now. Would you take someone like Livramento moving forward at Newcastle?
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of fans sometimes see us get linked with a relegated player and think, oh, we don't want relegated players. But I think it's important to remember Robertson got relegated with Hull and look what he's done for Liverpool. And the same for Wijnaldum at Newcastle. Obviously, he went to Liverpool and won Premier Leagues, won Champions League. So I think if a player is good enough and they've got potential and you can get them for a good price because of being relegated, then you can do some really good business. And with Livramento, I think in his first full season at Southampton, so that was the season before last, I thought he was really good, really impressive, a really good engine up and down the line, quite good defensively and offensively. And I think since then he's had an ACL injury, which is obviously quite a worrying injury. But I think he featured in the last two of Southampton's games of the season just gone. So yeah, if he's back to full fitness and sort of hasn't done too much damage and is able to get back to those levels he should about a year ago, then I think he'd be a really good signing. Yeah, definitely.
Daz, I'm going to ask you, Livramento. I know we've talked about him before. Would you take him at Newcastle?
Much like what Olly was saying there, I loved him last season. He was class. I think I came from Chelsea, and I was thinking, oh yes, bring him on, bring him to Newcastle in time. But yeah, it is unfortunate the injuries this season. But yeah, I'd go in for him. Yeah, back up for trips. Yep, love it.
That was just one out there.
Just want to mention, actually, with Livramento, he actually has the same agent as Eddie Howe. There's a few. For the blog where I obviously write every day and things like that. What I've tried to do recently is speak to a few journalists so that I can get the odd exclusive out for the blog. And when I ever see like a little murmuring or a little rumor that's out there, I often go to a few of the journalists I speak to and see whether they've got the same info or whether they can add anything. And one of the guys I went to, when I saw a link on Livramento, they did say to me that Newcastle have held talks with his agent. So that apparently that is something we're looking at. And obviously the fact he shares an agent with Howe, I'm not saying that automatically means he's going to sign, but it's an easier line of communication if they share the same agent and things like that. So yeah, that it could be one to watch that actually. I think it would be good.
I don't think Harrison Ashby will be too happy, like, will he, if he walks through the door. He's not. It's
a great point you mentioned, Charlie, with regards to that. But with Trippier, and look, we love Trippier. He's our captain. He's an unbelievable, talented player. But sometimes we forget he's 33. He's not going to be, 3 years down the line. To be fair, he said it in interviews. 3 years down the line, he may not be playing for Newcastle United anymore. So we do need to Livramento. I think he might be like 23.
20, I think.
20. He's younger than that.
Yeah.
Ashby.
Great age.
You know what? We haven't done that tonight, and I'm going to do a quick forward.
He's a little bit older than Daz.
Yeah, just slightly.
but equally, we're talking about players coming in. And would they be backups and blah, blah, blah. And they're all really good talking points. But equally, we need to look beyond some of the players that are in the squad now. We're not saying that Livramento or another right back's going to come in and take Trippier's place. I fully expect Trippier to play the majority of the games next season, certainly the big games, Champions League, all the rest of it. But Trippier played every minute pretty much last season of every game. Apart where a couple he came off sub late on when the game was done, but he played all the important games and all the important minutes last season. But who's to say he doesn't get injured? Fingers crossed it doesn't happen. Touch wood, it doesn't happen. But we need like an understudy to come in who's confident and good enough to take on that mantle. And we need to also look long term as well. So Livramento, for me, wouldn't be a bad shot. We've talked about Carl Walker-Peters before, Daz. I think he's a talented player. I've watched him a lot at Southampton. He goes under the radar because Southampton have been underperforming, but actually he's always performed well for Southampton and always been a difficult player. So it's one of those things. But yeah, Livramento, I thought he was 23, 20. Great age.
Okay, maybe another question. Right, go off with this one. The mighty win. I think it was probably when we were talking about Tonali. Could we tempt him with ASM? So what's your thoughts on ASM, guys? Pete, don't answer. What's your thoughts on ASM?
I'm just going to put the picture up.
I'll lead with this one. I'm ready to go full backing for Alan Saint-Maximin. Yeah, I know he divides opinion. So did David Ginola back in the day. So did Lovren Robert. So did Hatton Ben Arfa.
True.
When Alan Saint-Maximin leaves 5 years down the line, when Newcastle Premier League winners, whatever, and they put a montage of Alan Saint-Maximin up, doesn't matter whether you want them out right now. When that montage gets put up, everyone's loving him. You know, he's given us some good times. He's the reason why a lot of Newcastle fans were still actually bothered to go to the game before the takeover. He was the only little bit of excitement Newcastle had. You think back to the games at Burnley, home and away, and like he is like the youngins like a couple of years ago. You know, like he stopped a lot of them from wearing Manchester City shirts and Chelsea shirts and Manchester United shirts. You know what I mean? And even now, he had a little bit of an unlucky season. He was unplayable against Manchester City. He scored the last-minute winner against Wolves. Last-minute equaliser, sorry. Got injured, and then when he was just getting back into the team, you know, Newcastle were flying. He sort of couldn't really get going. But if you look at the actual wingers in the squad, in my opinion, he's better than Fraser, obviously. He's better than Miguel Almiron. He's better than Jacob Murphy. And he's better than Anthony Gordon. So for me, getting rid of him, especially when you consider you've got to have a squad for Europe and everything, I think it would be absolutely brain dead to get rid of him.
Especially for the prices that because we talked about this a lot in our squad game show. Because we hemmed and hawed whether we'd put him up for sale or keep him. But then Pete was alluding to the price. Who are interested in him were only offering say up to about 30 million. So that didn't make any sense.
I do think as well, Daz. You look at him when he was having a little bit of a bit part towards the back end of the season. He looks like a player. Obviously, Eddie Howe has his way of doing things, has his tactics, how he wants players to play. Saint-Maximin's a bit of a free spirit. When you see him, like he looks a little bit, he doesn't look like the Saint-Maximin where he just wants to blitz past the man and skin a couple of players. He looks a little bit coached. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes a player like him just needs to be just let him rip. You know what I mean?
Let loose.
Yes, I think. I mean, I don't know if I've given the pitch for pro Alan Saint-Maximin there, but that's my thoughts anyway.
Cool. And I'm going to go to Olly, but I'm going to add in another bit, Olly, to you, because Michael Palmer asked, would you swap ASM for Harvey Barnes? So you get the first question, keep or sell on ASM, and then Harvey Barnes, throw him into the mix as well.
Great question.
It's funny this, because if you look at goal returns, I mean, Harvey Barnes in a relegated Leicester side got 13 goals in the league last season, and Saint-Maximin's never really been close to that sort of number of goals, partly because he can't really stay fit. But to be honest with you, like Charlie said, I think the one reason I really like Saint-Maximin is he gives us something different that none of our wingers can offer, that kind of ability to beat a man and unpredictability. That I think when you, again, some of these low blocks, and teams will come to St. James's Park and put men behind the ball and make themselves tough to beat. And I think Saint-Maximin can offer something totally different in that respect. I think Barnes is a good player, and obviously I think it's kind of goes under the radar how many goals he's actually scored over the years for Leicester. He's actually quite prolific as like wingers go from a sort of bottom half side. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to do that deal, to be honest. Like Charlie, I've got a soft spot for St. Maximin, and if there's one player I would love to see Howe get the best out of, obviously he's done it with Joe Linton, Longstaff, Almiron, Shaw. I would love to see St. Maximin take his game to the next level. I think this next season, if he does stay, might be one of those make or break seasons where, whether it's injury records or just can he stay in the team, I think it might come down to how well he can do in this season, especially in the Champions League too. I think he's been really keen to get a chance in the Champions League. He's mentioned it quite a lot. So, to be honest, I wouldn't really want to do that swap. I think St. Maximin on his day is just so good that I almost want to see him in the Champions League. I think that would be, like Charlie said, he was a massive reason why not only fans turned up to games under Bruce and things, but a big reason why we stayed up. And I think he deserves his shot at the Champions League, really. So yeah, I think I'd just about keep St. Maximin.
Yeah, if he wants to stay, keep him. Yep. Okay. Next question. We must be coming.
I think there's only a couple of questions left, and then there's just comment after that.
Yeah. So look, Ferran Torres is one name that popped up. You'd take him, surely, would you? From Barca.
Good player.
Yeah, you would. I mean, he's had a merit since he's went to Barcelona. He hasn't even been there that long, really, has he? But I mean, he scored a hat-trick against the Toon, didn't he, for Man City?
You've just taken the words out of my mouth there. I was just about to say, well, he can score at St. James's Park, can't he? So.
It's always a good sign.
yeah. But yeah, I suppose he's one of those who, when he was at Man City, he wasn't always in the team every week, but when he did play, I think he was one of those that, a little bit like, I know he's a different player, but when Gabriel Jesus was at Man City, he didn't always start, but when he did play, he found a way of scoring, and Torres was a little bit like that at Man City. But yeah, the fact he's gone to Barca and kind of things have gone downhill a little bit. We tend to sign players whose careers are on the up, and you sometimes wonder if his is on the downward spiral a bit. But then maybe he's just been in the wrong environment at Barca. So yeah, I think he'd be a good player, but I'm not sure we'll go there.
Last question. So I mean, don't want the questions. Actually, make sure you hit that like button as well if you haven't already hit it. The 350 is the target. I have no idea.
Let us know how many likes we're at. We did say 3. That's set the target 350. 350. We've got around 350 in the chat right now, so we should be hitting that 350 for likes.
Would it be a cheat? Would it be a cheat if I went on YouTube and liked it? Would that be cheating?
No, that counts. That counts.
Go for it. If you haven't subscribed, I've seen lots of new people in the chat tonight. Comments in that I hadn't seen before.
Well, then they've had to subscribe, because you can't put a comment in unless you're subscribed. Because I turned that button on.
There we go, boys. I've just liked it there, so we've got another one.
Oh yes, thanks, Charlie. Right, so this is the last question for you, lads. Big one from Michael Palmer. If you can sign one player that we've been linked to, who would it be? Impossible question.
Mbappe says he wants to leave, doesn't he? No. one player we've been linked with. I mean, the easy option to say here would be Maddison. That would be the easy option, wouldn't it? That would be the easy option.
I think I know who mine would be. It's not very realistic, but we have been linked with him. Is Declan Rice?
Yeah. I started on that.
Yeah, I can't help but think that move to Arsenal is just going to get done. And I think David Ornstein from The Athletic said earlier that Man City are now interested. So if we're being honest, like, can we compete with Arsenal and Man City? I think, well, maybe Arsenal, but if you start getting Man City into the mix, and I really doubt it, but I just think he's just. I know some people don't actually rate him that highly, and there's a bit of a debate around that, and people think he's a bit overrated. But yeah, I think he's offensively, defensively, as a character, he's young, he's English, which Howard seems to love as well. So I think he'd be amazing. But yeah, I'm not sure we could pull that one off, but I'd love to.
The one spanner. Sorry, go on, Charlie.
No, sorry, Pete. What were you going to say, mate?
No, I was going to say the one spanner that might throw in the works is that because a lot of people are talking about the Man City link today and saying, "Oh, Man City are in. Oh, clearly, he's going to get to Man City if they go in. If they go through, may well be." But does that bring up the Calvin Phillips conversation again? Because they surely can't go into a season with Rodri, Calvin Phillips, and Declan Rice, who all play a very similar position. So could that potentially bring up the Calvin conversation for Newcastle. But I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I was going to mention Calvin Phillips before when we were talking about defensive midfielders, like the number 6, the Bruno Gamora sort of dilemma. In terms of the question, Pete, I mean, I think I tried to overthink the question a little bit. Kev T in the chat put Barella, who have obviously been linked with like heavily. That's the no-brainer right there. I was trying to think of left backs. I was trying to think of left backs like Tierney, because I think left back would be the area of Newcastle's team where if we got like a proper left back, and that would be the biggest upgrade on the team. But Kev T, shout out to you, brother. Barella, no-brainer.
He knows ball. He knows ball. That's it.
I think
He's one of the lonely family.
This is changing the subject a little bit there, but just when we mentioned about left backs, and I know Charlie's saying that he'd love to get like an attacking left back who can do what Trippier does down the other side. I think the only thing to be careful of there is the dynamic we've had is when Trippier goes down the right, Byrne almost fills in as a left-sided centre-back, Botman's in the middle and Shaw's on the right. And I think, obviously, Howe's going to have plans tactically how we can combat that if we've got 2 attacking full-backs. But we'd have to change our sort of tactics and setup quite a bit to have 2 attacking left-back and a right-back. So it's in time, it would be great for us to be like that. A bit like you see at, say, Man City when they've got 2 full-backs right up the pitch. But we'll have to really evolve our game, I think, to a point where we're having all of the ball and we've got real control of games to be able to have both full-backs up the pitch. But that's the exciting thing now. I think the likes of Byrne, like Charlie said, have done such a good job. But when we can upgrade, say, Byrne to a more attacking left-back, and we can see the team evolve, like, tactically, they're all things to look forward to, really, aren't they?
It would be really interesting to see, and someone in the chat or one of us would probably be able to find this out. I would love to see how many games this season we've had more possession. Because I do see the evolution of our team with possession and with the ball at our feet improved so much this season. Like even in games where we might have, only just won games, or even games where we might have even lost that. I don't know. I think maybe even the Liverpool game, we might have had more possession.
Even the Carabao Cup final, mate, Newcastle had like 62% possession or something. But they dominated the ball. They dominated the ball, but they didn't dominate the game in that final. And like that's probably what you're getting at there.
Yeah. Olly made a great point in terms of that. We are on that motion to move forward with regards to that and be that type of team that's being more progressive and dominating possession. But it's an interesting point, definitely.
I think that's probably might be one of the reasons why. I think that might be one of the reasons we like Tierney, because I think it's for Scotland. He sometimes filled in as a left-sided centre-back in like a back 3, and Robertson's the wing-back. So Tierney, I know he isn't a centre-back and he isn't like Byrne, but he's got experience of tucking in. And when he needs to, so obviously Tierney can get forward and he's a good passer of the ball and he can make those overlapping runs, but he has the awareness to fill in. Whereas if you've got a left back who just wants to bomb up the line and just leave his centre back, I think that we might struggle tactically in that point of view.
A counterpoint to that though, Ollie, we were talking about St. Maximin 5 minutes ago. So now I reckon he's impacted a little bit by Dan Byrne being like centre back playing left back. You know what I mean? He hasn't got like if you had a Kieran Trippier there on the overlap, whatever. Like St. Maximin wouldn't be as
true.
You'd have another option there with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
food for thought for Eddie Howe. Food for thought for Mr. Eddie Howe.
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
Pete, if I was put that question to you, one player you want this summer, who would that player be?
Oh, come on!
No, you're not getting away with this.
Come on, this is a silly question. I've been since what August. Last year, I've been bigging him up. I want James Maddison at Newcastle United. I want him in the black and white. I think he's a superb player. I really do. I love him. One player, Barella. Oh, wow, superstar. Like it'd be unreal. It'd be unreal. Like beyond my wildest dreams of a player to come and play for Newcastle this season. Nicola Barella, but for me, James Maddison, because I think he symbolises so much for me about where Newcastle United want to go.
Yeah,
see all these other players that have been linked with us, great, like Barella and a number of others, also do the same. But the fact that we've been after Maddison for so long, when we've been after a player, whether it's Botman, whether it's Trippier, whether it's any other player that we've been linked with for a period of time, we've got them.
Yeah.
And we had 2 bids rejected last summer for James Maddison. We apparently went in again in January and was told they're not willing to sell. I just think that when we want a player, we tend to get them. And so he is the guy that I would go to. But
it would be a bit of a marker as well, because it would be like within 2 years you've went from Hamza Chowdhury on loan to James Maddison. You know what I mean? Especially with it being Leicester as well. Like it would be almost like this is what it used to be like. This is what it's now like, sort of thing.
There you go. Yeah, let's face it. 2 years ago, when Maddison, or maybe even 3 years ago, when like Maddison was scoring at St James's Park in lockdown, he was doing the old darts. The rest of it. Would he have known that Newcastle would be the powerhouse that they are now? And would he have ever imagined that he would be putting on the black and white of Newcastle, being that Leicester at that point were there, fighting for Champions League, and we were down there, and we've just gone with swap places. It's just like poetic in every metric. But
I'd love to be a fly in the wall in that England camp, man. I bet you Callum Wilson's bunking in the rooms with him. I bet he's playing pools with him. I bet like Maddison, say there's a burger van comes outside the training ground. Maddison goes, Wilson goes. I bet he's. I bet
he'll have a restraining order against him.
They're Coventry boys, aren't they? They're both Coventry boys.
Oh,
so they're really good mates. So that definitely goes in our favour, 100%.
To be honest, I'm really confident the Maddison deal gets done. Like I think, like you said there, when we've had our mindset on a certain target, we've been quite relentless, and I think it works both ways as well. Maddison's going to be aware that we made the bids last summer. We were showed the interest in January, and then when you look at Spurs, they've not even qualified for Europe. So if Maddison, who's played Conference League and Europa League for Leicester, really wants to get that Champions League football, how long until Spurs are back in the top 4? If they lose Harry Kane, it could be they might not get there for years. I know Charlie reckons they're on the slide, and I would agree. So if the opportunity is Spurs on Newcastle, I really think Newcastle's a no-brainer, not just for the fact we've got Champions League, but the fan base, the chance to work with Eddie Howe. There's Trippier there, you'd be on the same side as him. And the fact he's out of contract in a year's time, which gives us a bit of leverage there over Leicester to get the deal done. I think everything points to him signing. But yeah, I hope I haven't cursed it saying that. But yeah, I really think he's going to come.
I don't think we have. Someone just put in there about Joselu scoring for Spain, and Ian McKenna had just put rumoured Madrid after Joselu. Yeah. Not rumoured, they're signing him.
Yeah, he wouldn't have got away.
It's a good deal now. He's going back to the club that he came through in the academy.
Yeah. They're replacing the Ballon d'Or winner, Karim Benzema, with Joselu.
How mad is that turnaround? But you know what? Fair play to him.
Fair play to him, because he was absolutely pawny at the tune, wasn't he? Let's be honest. I mean, he was. So fair play for him. He's almost done like a little Joe Linton story. Like when he's went back to Spain.
Right. Absolutely. Lads, I know we're coming to the end of the show, but I just want to say, and I know Daz feels exactly the same, we've just put it in the private chat as well. This has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you boys. I know you both, Ollie and Charlie, know each other, but this has been, I feel like I'm at the pub right now. About transfers. It's obviously been a fantastic chat tonight about all things Newcastle. Obviously, Lee was on early with obviously great knowledge, and it was great to have the fivers on chatting, but absolutely loved it tonight. Absolutely spot on. So thank you very much for coming and joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us on.
No,
welcome
back anytime, lads.
Definitely. Take us home, Daz.
Let's a quick shout out to our sponsors, and then we'll close it out for the night. So shout out to H2O Bathroom Design Co., the Northeast's largest supplier of Velcro and bathroom wear. Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established, ran by the family. Get down to the showroom on 11th Avenue, Team Valley Estate, Gateshead. So you were looking for a new bathroom or something, Charlie, the last time you were on. You were going to do it all up. So there you go. Can't go wrong here. Will sort you out in H2O Bathroom Design Co. Also, shout out to the radiatorshed.com, and as you can see here, as you put Charlie and Ollie in jail there. So if you're looking for any kind of radiators, contact Russ. I was in contact with him myself there this week. He's got more new stuff coming. Something that he was about to release it, but no, he wasn't happy with it. Always the perfectionist. He's gone back to change it again. But when it's released, we will put it on the show as well. Actually, we're giving another shout out. He's not on tonight, but a shout out to Newcastle World as well. The lads there. So if you want to get the latest breaking news as well, click that, scan that QR code, and you'll be able to sign up for the newsletters for Newcastle World. That's it for all our sponsors. We will be back soon when that breaking news drops. But for a sign up. But
just before we go, of course, Olly, Charlie, where can we find you boys? Where can we find you boys? For anyone that maybe isn't savvy on social media, that aren't already following you, Olly, first and foremost, where can we find you?
Yeah, so the website's nufcblog.co.uk. I think it's just below my name there. But yes, we're on Facebook. If you put in NUFC blog, we should be there, and on Twitter as well. So yeah, we like to basically put out all the latest news and bring it all together, really. So yeah, find us on the website. It'll be great to get more people viewing it. Yeah.
And Charlie, where can we find you? In the garden somewhere with a beer in his hand.
Same as here, mate. I've waited that one out. Whoa, I'm trying to. There.
Yeah.
Whoa,
how many of you had
there. Charlie Bennett.
I love it.
Charlie Bennett at Charlie Bennett. I mean, there's no flash there, unless someone can think of a mad nickname for us. Just on Twitter, mate, just giving me views, news, opinion on Newcastle United. And I'd like to shout out Olly as well, because when I was a student coming through the game, learning my trade as a sports writer and stuff, I was working like for NUFC blog, and Olly's the main man over there. So if anyone wants to get involved in a little bit of sports writing to help Olly out, give him a shout, because he's a top bloke.
Oh, cheers, Charlie. Cheers.
I made him blush there, didn't I?
You did.
Honestly, Olly, your debut on Loaded Mag NUFC. I know you obviously do your podcast as well for NUFC blog, but it's been an absolute pleasure, and everyone in the chat has been massively pleased with everything that we've talked about, and the fact that you've joined us tonight. It'd be amazing to have you both on again later on in the window. To talk about, hope fingers crossed, a few signings coming in, but we'll definitely get you guys back on for sure. But Olly, absolutely spot on, mate. Hope you've enjoyed it with us.
Yeah, it's been great.
And we'll definitely get you back. Daz's internet is slightly dropped, as we expect towards the end of the show. It always happens. But look, we will be back. And look, Loaded Mac NUFC doesn't stop. You guys know it. We know it. There's so much more coming in terms of content. Fingers crossed, some signings are on the way. And we will be talking all things Newcastle United for the whole of this summer as we build into the new season. But look, thank you to everyone in the chat. You guys are amazing. Your questions, your comments, everything makes the channel what it is. So please continue to do so. And we'll be back with more very, very soon. To keep an eye on Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube for all things Loaded Mag NUFC. But for now, we'll let you guys go. Of course.
Cheers, boys. Have a good one, boys. I'll catch you next time.